So good morning to everyone, especially all of you who are as jet lagged as I am. Jono has asked me to serve as the session chair for the first session, which is on semantics. We've had a bit of a schedule issue, and consequently, the first presenter is actually going to be Dennis Allen. Dennis, are you anywhere I can see you? I'm mostly looking at lights at the moment. Thank you. Like to come up? All right. Okay, so Dennis is the cyber training lead for the SEI's CERT Cyber Workforce Development Program. He's been working for the Software Engineering Institute for over 10 years. All right, and has more than 20 hours of IT, or more than 20 years, 20 hours.
20 hours is good.
As I said, jet lag.
Done a little bit.
Of IT and security experience working with Fortune 500 corporations, government, and military. Okay, he teaches the Applied Information Assurance graduate course for CMU's I&I, and he's delivered numerous professional training classes and presented at security conferences such as MIS Institute's InfoSec World and FloCon.
So we just saw all the slides backwards, so hopefully everybody got that there. So thank you for the introduction, I appreciate it. So this will go pretty quick. I think we got about a half hour. I've got a few slides. It's really just to sort of introduce what we're gonna be covering, and then I'm adventurous. We're gonna try actually a live demo today, and we'll see how that goes. So most of you, I believe, are familiar with us, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but the CERT program is part of the Software Engineering Institute, a federally funded research and development center managed by Carnegie Mellon University. Pretty much everybody here that's working the FloCon piece for you is from the CERT program. There are some SCI folks. So the people that had the class with me yesterday got to see a few of these slides. So not me, Dennis Allen, the football coach for the Raiders, that's not me. Dennis Allen, the axe murderer criminal from Australia, also not me. My LinkedIn profile is there. There's a few resources on the SEI website, some podcasts and things that we're working on. Stay tuned. We've got a really cool paper that's coming out about using video games to try to train the next generation cyber workforce, try to fill that gap. So the presentation that we just had was great because here's what the Rose Garden actually looks like now, if you go there. And this is what the Japanese garden looks like if you go there now. Nice. I don't know if it's worth the $10, but it was pretty cool. Heck of a walk. And there's some interesting smells in the Voodoo Donut Shop area, one of which is donuts, and there are some others. So what is a common operating picture? We're going to talk about that just a little bit. Some of the challenges with trying to develop something like that. I'll talk a little bit about Nagios and Google Earth and how we use that and how we apply that to some of the things that we did and some of the lessons learned. And I'll get into talking about why we're doing this here in a bit. But essentially a COP is a single picture, single view, where it's going to let you see the status of everything that matters to you. It doesn't have to be just cyber, and that's some of the challenges that we've had in some of our partners or customers that we've worked with. If they want to see that cyber information along with the other things, whether it's logistics information, where vehicles might be, where planes might be, where troops might be. There's lots of reasons why you would want to correlate that information, and being able to see that on one display in a meaningful manner is quite difficult. So why me? Well, we've been doing this for a while, doing the cyber exercise training piece, simulation piece for over 10 years. And one of the things that we've done is large scale deployments of thousands of virtual and physical machines, hundreds of participants coming into these training environments, and we need to be able to monitor the infrastructure ourselves and get it up and running quickly. So we don't have time to build all the underlying monitoring tools, so how can we deploy that, push that out, and be able to see, hey, is everything working the way it's supposed to be? Is the stuff that we're breaking on purpose something that they can see and fix and remediate? And then can we actually inject all the cyber data into it? Can we look at flow? Can we look at intrusion detection information? Can we compare that with the other events that are going on in the exercise or the training event? So that's where a lot of the background for this comes from. It's important, why do we need a global situational awareness? Because a lot of our organizations are more than just, your 50 users and your mom and pop shops in one location. A lot of us are dealing with big government organizations, militaries, large professional organizations that are multinational, and being able to view these threats from one site to another, see activities that are happening throughout the world, may be a good indicator of something that might be coming our way. We can also correlate events, figure out where things occurred first, understand where the impact might be. Optimization, Amazon's a great example because they're all over the world, but there's certain places they can't do continuity of operations to, based off of what data, who their customers are, things like that. So understanding where those risks are is really important in the global SA. There's a few other things on here, proactively monitoring, et cetera, which we'll cover here in a bit. So this is the tough one because we've got all kinds of stuff. We've got all kinds of data, it's flooding us all the time. So we got IDS alerts, we have firewall logs, I've heard people talk about Splunk and ArcSight and different SIM tools that you can dump it all there, but what are you going to do with it once it's there? That's one of the challenges you have. Now you've got this big collection piece that you have to maintain. How can you automate the queries in there to get useful information? So we're inundated with cyber data. How can we get something that your senior leader, your manager, your CISO is going to be able to look at quickly and figure out what is your security posture and what does he really care about right now? That's the big question we've always tried to ask is, why do I care? When you have, like I said, a general or senior leader, somebody walk in and they look at the monitor with all the blinking lights, you know, is it valuable to them? Is it more than just eye candy? So we try to come up with some things using tools that the analysts can maybe drill into, but having that high-level perspective as well. And the big thing is there non-cyber things that you can put into this sort of cyber console to make that happen? Well, why are these things important? This is a big piece that people forget. You kind of drive by it. You're so busy trying to get your flow sensors going, your packet capture stuff going, your IDS going, making sure you got your host-based security going, and you're doing all that logging, and you got your SCIM stuff going. How much of it do you really care about? So take it way back to doing your risk assessment, understanding your line of business, what data is important, what users are important, what information is important, and those are the things that you need to be monitoring. Those are the things that you need to be tuning your alerts for, and then therefore the things that you need to be presenting in this common operating picture so you can have something that is actually actionable. Actually actionable. You hear that a lot. I want to get to the demo because it's way more fun. The Nagios piece is where we started. Has anybody heard of Nagios? Played around with it a little bit? How about with NagViz? So there is a distribution called Fully Automated Nagios that has a lot of the plugins and bells and whistles already enabled, the backend database for some other things. And it also has the NagViz plugin, which allows you to do these maps. Now, it doesn't have to be a map. It could be an image of anything. And here you see the examples that are up here. One is a network diagram. Well, it's really nice to go in and look, and you can see, hey, if the server is red, you can kind of mouse over and get the status. We'll see that here in the demo. But you got an idea of where that is in your architecture without having to, you know, get out the Visio and kind of compare them. So that's pretty neat. And you can also have this geolocation idea. You can see a map and where that server is and see other indicators of compromise or concern that might exist around there. Well, as awesome as Nagios and NagViz are, and the fact that you can monitor just about anything with Nagios, you really can, anything from service checks to application checks to log files, you can do a whole bunch of things. It still wasn't quite enough. Not quite enough to do what we wanted to do. We wanted to pull in a bunch of other data sources, and we needed more sizzle. It needed to look prettier, if you will. Google Earth, if nothing, it's pretty. You got a big spinny globe. If it does nothing else for you, it's pretty cool looking. So we try to figure out how we can incorporate some of these data sources into Google Earth to try to have this common operating picture. The other thing is, it was on me to do this, and I wasn't going to develop anything, right? I can maybe throw together some bash scripts, throw together some Python code, but I'm not developing a tool from scratch. Now, we have some other research efforts that we're prototyping these, again, not developed by me, to try to overcome some of the shortcomings in Google Earth. But the idea here is use something that's there, right? Take advantage of some of the free or open source tools that are out there, get familiar with some of the capabilities and what you can use in your environment, and then figure out what you want to purchase later on. Lots of really cool features, and I'll demonstrate some of those here in a second. The ability to turn things on and off, what you see and what you don't see, is really the critical piece, because one of our key takeaways that we'll see is a COP is different things to different people. Your senior leader is going to want to see one thing, your analyst is going to want to see something completely different. And trying to build a tool that is everything to everybody is really hard. So the ability to kind of check boxes and uncheck boxes is really helpful. And again, it's cool, and people like cool. So we'll just hop right over to the demo here. Make sure I got a few other things running here that are going to support us. And don't be surprised if Google crashes, because it does, one of the drawbacks. But let's take a look at a map. Map, great, there's nothing on there. Let's see what we can do. Now, Nagios, one of the cool things that fully automated Nagios distribution does is it has a plugin, a broker, if you will, that'll let you query that status data. So what we do is we query that data and just write it out to a text file that we then parse and create a KML file that we can load into Google Earth. And I got a nice slide that shows how all this works in a bit. But that's the general premise for all of these inputs that we're going to look at, whether they're the IDS sensors, whether they're flow connection logs from Bro or Silk or anything like that, or rogue IP lists, black IP lists, those types of things, malicious IPs, those sorts of things. You can grab that information and then basically transform that into KML and then load them into here and have them automatically update. So when I read in the Nagios information, I plot it. I've got a custom geolocation table that shows where these icons should be. And you can see I have here a couple of hosts on my network. We'll drill in here a little bit. And you've got a status. Now, in this example, the status is false. I just kind of pick colors. I like green and yellow, not for the ducks. Just sort of happened that way. But you can read the status, and based off of the status of all of the hosts for that environment, you can make it green or red, and it's really easy to see. You can look up and say, oh, yellow, something's a little bad. Red, something's way bad, right? And then you can open up the box here, and the cool part about Google Earth is you can actually put just about anything, not anything, but just about anything inside of this window. And here we're actually calling out to a demo from that fully automated Nagios site that is actually running Nagviz right now. And if I mouse over any of these, it's live Nagios data. I can drill in to the site, and you can actually see live availability data. So at a high level, somebody that might just want to see what's the status of the servers, you're great. You can just look at the map and you're good to go. If for an analyst, if you want to drill in, you can drill in and see that status data pretty quickly. And I'll just show you a couple other maps that Nagviz provides that does that same sort of geolocation. Here, you've got different statuses of servers or services, as well as links where you can get utilization. And the idea of having this map representation lets you kind of correlate with maybe some events that might be happening, whether there's weather incidents or political incidents, something that might be impacting that area. So the next piece would be to correlate that with some other data. So it's FloCon. So let's throw out some flow data. And you can do this whether it's connections or bytes. I'm sure I'm hoping you've seen some sort of heat map similar to this, where you've got some sort of somewhat readable presentation of traffic. And in this particular scenario, the lighter ones are hotter, white hot type of thing. And it's customizable with the KML generation tool that we're using, but the bottom line here is, if I look at this quickly, I can see, all right, well, I've got more traffic going to this spot in California. Doesn't mean a whole lot to me just yet. We'll get there, we'll correlate some things. But right now, we can see that we've got some traffic going there just by looking at the screen. Whether or not we need to take any action on it, we don't know. There's a few other things that we could do. We can drill into those heat maps a little bit. We can drill into the IPs. We can see that we have other information there. And it's really about customizing that balloon, if you will. That's really what the magic was for what we did, was putting different things in the balloon based off of the data set that was coming in that would allow you to drill into the tools. So the fact that we've got some data there is not a big deal. We've got some availability data. Well, how about if we correlate that with some IDS data? And I know everybody has just one IDS alert that they say that they can take a look at because they see no other IDS alerts that mean anything to them. And I say that sarcastically because we know how difficult it is to tune intrusion detection sensors, all right, and get data that's really the data you care about. So if we look at this one particular example, we have one alert, and you can start to put things together. Okay, I have a host or a host group over here that's yellow. I may be having an issue, maybe degraded service. There may be something going on. Oh, I can link that to an IDS alert that happens to be coming from that area. And oh, by the way, I can also link that to the area over here where I have a whole lot of data. Now, I don't have a lot of answers yet, but I'm starting to kind of scope my investigation because I can correlate all these different tools. If we look at our alert, we can drill in, and again, this is the beauty of the Google Earth pieces. You can kind of customize what you present in here, and maybe I want to link in to see where that IP address goes. And this can go to any URL that I choose. So here I'm just getting information about this Carnegie Mellon IP that's involved with some kind of a attack that may be with this Google IP. Who knows? Google's trying to hack Carnegie Mellon. Who knew? So you can get some information again. At a high level, I can see what's going on. At a lower level, I have the opportunity to drill in and get to some things. Maybe we want to take it a little further and drill into a different tool. So maybe the source and destination have different links than what the actual link to the line that demonstrates where the attack is actually coming from and to. Maybe we drill into something like Ntop. And the newer version of Ntop, Ntop NG, does a really good job with flow. Is anybody using Ntop? So if nothing else, play around with it. This is on my Mac, Mac ports. Anybody use Mac port to do any of their install? Pretty easy to install Ntop. Ntop NG I actually had to download and compile, but pretty easy to get Ntop going. You should definitely play around with it. It's a cool tool. It's also available on a number of free Linux distributions like Indian Firewall and things like that. So if I wanted to take a look at all of the stuff coming from my network, I could do something like this. Look at the hosts that are on my network that are active, assuming we got things fired up here appropriately. The flows, and again, the risk of doing a live demo, right? Let's see if we're not crashed yet. That might be part of the problem. So you can see a lot of information that's on there, are different types of connections. You can drill into a particular host, get information on that host, what it's doing. There's some neat things like looking at the flow information. You got a GUI interface to the flow activity. You've got talkers, so the people that are part of the conversation, you can easily see who they're talking with. You've got all kinds of pretty pictures. Everybody likes pretty pictures. But it's great to have a tool that, again, if you're coming from an interface here where you're starting up and you're just trying to correlate things at a high level, then you can, if you really want to take it to that next level, you can drill into another tool that's going to have that data. And in this particular one, we drill into our own local Ntop instance that has information about that host and its activity. So now we can start to see the picture starting to form. We've got potentially an issue at a site. Got an IDS alert for sure that may or may not be related to that issue, but now we have a way to scope our investigation. We have additional data. Maybe we got to check what protocols are pushing that data out, do an additional investigation, see if it's related to the IDS alert. And that's just 3 data sources, right? And the fact that you can visualize them right here really is going to speed up the investigation. So there's other things that you can throw on top of here. Does anybody subscribe to malware feeds or like malicious IP feeds or blacklists? So you could easily take that IP list and put it into something like this. This is a free one of malicious IPs that I put in. Now, if you enable the heat maps, it could get a little ugly. You start going, which heat map is which heat map, and you got to play around with your KMLs to get it just the way you want it. But that's sort of the advantage here of Google Earth. There's a lot. It's going to take a second here. That you can turn these on and off as needed. And I downloaded another data set that had known Zeus Eye Peas. Maybe I wanted to look at that data set. Maybe I want to see just the IPs and not the heat map. I can look at some of that data, drive over to see where those are at. We can also turn that heat map back on. Again, this may or may not be relative to the activity that you're on, like that same investigation, but the idea that you can have another data set that could come into play that you can enable or disable is really the advantage here. Now, all of this is technical pieces, right? So how about if we take it a step further and do something non-technical? So who's a Twitter person? Tweeter? Trends map is pretty cool in that it gives you that same sort of geo-IP type of thing of what's trending and where. You can actually go to the website. If you log in with your Twitter account, you got a little bit more access to different things. But hey, wouldn't it be neat to see the activity that's happening in an area, maybe Paris or maybe like the Arab Spring in Egypt, you could see activities, and if you've got a data center there or resources there, how that, you can start to forecast how that may or may not impact your resources and then take actions. So bringing in that social media aspect and figuring out how that may or may not play is a little bit of intel. Now, how about if you take that a step further? There's one that I like. I'm not promoting them. I don't actually subscribe to them in any way, but I really like the way this looks. So we'll fire it up. And this goes out to the Allen Vanguard site, no relation. And this is pretty neat in that I like it because it's simple. I can see right away by the numbers that show up here, the number of events that are happening. Now, I can't tell right away if they mean anything to me specifically, maybe if I'm correlating some other resources, but I can see right away the numbers and what they might mean. And then I could drill in to the Paris ones and maybe see some of the events that are going on, with the events that are going on right now based off of everything that I'm sure you're aware of in the news. But then you can, like I said, correlate this non-cyber related information with your cyber data, and maybe they play off of one another. So there's one last one that I wanted to fire up. And this is a good example of something that is really pretty, but to me means very little, right? I mean, it is awesome. I can spin it, I can drill in it, I know there's some numbers, but that's the problem you run into with a lot of these COP-like tools, these essay-like tools. Be careful you don't get caught up in this. Don't get caught up in the bells and the whistles and the things that make it look pretty. You got to figure out what is meaningful to you, to your organization, your leadership, and try to tune it, and so that when you walk in and you look at it, you know, what's my security posture? Am I in good shape? Is there something that requires immediate attention? So I'll be available for questions. There's a neat little piece that a very smart student at Carnegie Mellon worked with me on. He developed a little Python library and scripts to take data feeds, whether they're a snort feed or a CSV or an IP list, and actually generate that KML using some XML templates to make something like this a lot easier. We haven't released it. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. So if you want, you can grab a card and you can shoot me an email if you got any questions about it. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Oh, shoot.
So one of the things I always see with these types of maps is, you've got geolocation, items of that nature. Have you looked any at looking at the actual circuits that are connecting things, trace routes, say the data from telegeography, something like that?
Sure, so the big thing would be to incorporate some of those other monitoring tools. So for example, Nagios, I mentioned, will let you do that same sort of analysis, whether it's doing SNMP checks on a router for utilization or actually doing those sorts of ping checks or availability checks, and then they can display that status. So it's how creative you get with it. So you can certainly do something like that in Nagviz and probably a dozen other tools that let you do availability monitoring, but being creative with how you get that into whatever your other SA tool is, that's the challenge. Good.
Everybody please. The speaker again.
Thanks.